Greetings folks, welcome to Bob of All Trades. Today's video review format is going to be done much different than anything you've seen in the past. I'm just going to kick it off a little different for the year of 2021. By no means will this be the new standard unless it's universally loved. All the information will have the timestamps linked in the description below, so if there's something you want to see in particular first, straight away before moving on to the meat and potatoes of this review, then by all means, have at it. That's what it's there for. But this Maingears Vector 2 laptop that I'm reviewing today was sponsored by my wallet. Like, subscribe, whatever needs to happen to make the algorithm happy to promote this video would be awesome. This laptop set me back $1,000 US before tax, and a video like this is likely to make about $10 over the first 28 days. So what's the definition of insanity? Pretty much everything I just told you and then repeatedly doing it. Not too smart, but I can't help myself. And I don't think you can blame me, because the Maingears Vector 2 is a laptop that many people were requesting me to review because, according to many of the vocal community out there, this is the same device that Electronics sells, but cheaper. All right, 1 week in. This is not a device that Electronics sells, okay? This chassis is what is Electronics calling their MB15. That chassis has an older 6-core and a 1050 Ti. This has something completely different, and it's not a Max 15. It lacks the build quality, it lacks in software, it's lacking in many places, and it runs hotter than Satan's balls. But at $1,000 US, it might be cool enough for you, and if you want, I'll even do a teardown and a repaste of this after this review. You let me know if you're interested in that. So enough babbling. I know, I'll talk the balls off a rhino. What is in the Maingears Vector 2? For starters, we have the 10th generation i7 10750H. You can undervolt this in the BIOS to a negative 50 millivolt undervolt maximum. Pretty awesome. Third-party software can push this further. Do at your own risk. The GPU is the RTX 2060 Max P. 90-watt variant, no Eluktroboost. There's no boost. Electronics calls it Eluktroboost. Other manufacturers call it something else. There's no boost on this device. It only came with a 180-watt power supply. That was a dead giveaway right there. And I will show evidence of what kind of boosting capability or lack thereof once we get into that part of the video. Of course, that will be time-stamped if you need to get there right now. As far as the memory, single channel from the factory. It is a Samsung DIMM, which is cool. 16 gigs, right? And I will put the matching stick linked in the description below from Amazon. I believe at the time of this recording, it was like $70 for that. So dual channel memory, performance, gaming, that's a no-brainer. It is a must. Don't even question it, just do it. You want dual channel memory, all right? Matching capacity, always ideal. I've talked about this numerous times on the channel. But for the sake of maximum performance, I pulled out this DIMM, which is 3200 megahertz. It will default to 2933 because that is Intel's high-end spec on 10th gen per laptops. And I replaced it with two 8 gigabyte sticks of the best stuff that I had on hand, which was the HyperX lower latency stuff, but only at 2666 memory speed. So if I would have dual channel of this, there's a potential for slightly improved minimum frame rate performance. That's what's really nice about faster memory and CPU intensive gaming. Nonetheless, you're still going to get better performance here than you will with a single 16 gigabyte DIMM. So it is what it is. Just wanted to be upfront about that as to what I did and why. For storage, you'll actually get the inline full terabyte storage. Pretty awesome. And Windows 10 Pro will come preloaded on this device. At least that was the case as a Micro Center purchase. There's also another M.2 slot, which is NVMe capable. The Wi-Fi card is the AX201 Wi-Fi 6. Everybody likes that. That's great. And a lot of those parts are replaceable, right? Memory, Wi-Fi, and storage. I dig it. The battery is actually a 62 watt-hour unit. Yeah, I couldn't believe it either, because all of the literature on the box, on Micro Center's website, and on Amazon, which I will link this product down below, and I believe it's $1,200 there, all states that it has a 46 watt-hour battery. Well, mine has a 62. Even the box that this hardware came in says 46 watt-hours. It is 62. What kind of expectations can you get from that? Well, this little budget-friendly Tongfang chassis has a MUX switch. I know, woo, rejoice, that is fantastic. As an enthusiast of hardware, gaming, all those shenanigans, MUX switch is the best. If you're not too sure what that is, I talked about it in its own video. Watch it. Cliff Notes version, you're gonna get 3 different modes for the display to connect to the graphics card. You're going to get the MS Hybrid, which is NVIDIA Optimus. It's the way I would say 95% of our beloved gaming laptops use. They'll use the integrated graphics to save power, and when it's game time, it'll automatically switch to the dedicated graphics. Convenient, but there's some cons there, again, talked about in its own video. Then you can force the system to run on its dedicated GPU, making it run more like a desktop. Then you can activate fast sync, all sorts of unique features, nice quality of life stuff. You can also use shadow play to record to desktop now. Really spectacular, and it is the way that you want to game, right? You want that dedicated graphics card directly connected to the display. Again, link in the description below for a video as to explaining what the MUX does and why your next laptop should have one. Or integrated graphics only, you won't even see your NVIDIA graphics card within any type of software, and you'll get better battery life. So what does that mean? 62 watt-hour battery, hybrid mode, 4 hours, integrated graphics mode, pushing 5 hours, dedicated mode, 90 minutes, right? That's not gaming, that's just using the laptop as one would, basic tasks, you know, Word, Skype, things like that. You may get a little bit better if you turn the brightness down, but if you do, you're gonna get PWM flicker on this panel. We're gonna talk about that in depth. But next, let's get on to the build quality, because that is the number one thing that you're gonna notice right away that stands out, that is different from some of these electronic laptops that this machine has been compared to. So for starters, the chassis weighs just under 4.2 pounds. Now, the build quality on this device, we have an aluminum lid. We've got the Wi-Fi antenna built into the lid. This is very common on many laptops, not just gaming units. The rest of this chassis is plastic. Plenty of ventilation underneath, but it thermal throttles in a matter of minutes, and we will showcase that later. Thicker rubber feet on the back, thinner on the front, good for keyboard ergonomics, and ideally improved thermal performance. But again, this chassis is almost all plastic minus the lid. And so it is very, very flimsy. I mean, I'm effortlessly tweaking this here. If you grab it from the side, it bends like a banana. I noticed this straight away in Micro Center. And guys, I put all the screws back in this device, okay? It is as sturdy as I can make it. And it doesn't have a good feel to it if you are comparing this to an electronics device, especially when it comes to the Max 15 or maybe even the Matrix RP15 that this, for some odd reason, has been compared to as well, even though there's two different CPUs. Chassis do look kind of similar though. So build quality here is not up to the standard that has been compared to, but I personally don't really have a big problem with it, especially since I paid $1,000 for a device that's offering some compelling features that perhaps you and I might both enjoy. So what about that trackpad? Oh, you can open this with one hand, so that's pretty nice. Now, electronics will sell this chassis, and it's called the MB15, right? And it will have a glass trackpad, along with a biometrics fingerprint scanner. This has a plastic trackpad, no Windows Hello, but you can double tap the top left-hand corner to disable the trackpad. Microsoft touchpad, precision drivers. It does work very well for a gaming laptop. It's just not that smooth glass solution that will be in this exact chassis featuring different hardware from another manufacturer, okay? Whew, that's a mouthful. Click symmetry is really good and it doesn't rattle, so overall the trackpad on a gaming laptop, certainly above average. It just is a different standard that you may want to compare it to something else. The keyboard, single zone RGB. There's no enter key to the right of the number pad, and that's kind of been standard with a lot of Tongfang chassis. I'm hoping that gets changed in the future. The keyboard feels okay. Sounds like this. It's like a budget-friendly SteelSeries type keyboard, and overall I do like it. Not too much to complain about, but you can just look at this layout and know right off the bat if this is something for you or if it's something you're clearly going to despise. And of course you have your power button and performance mode switching. We will talk about this in the software section on its own. And again, like I said before, the RGB is single zone. There's no 3 or 4 zone here or per key, just single zone. You can make it many different colors. I chose white as that seems to be a popular request, and so I'm hopefully able to showcase that here. Now that webcam and microphone, guys, located in your most favorite spot down below. Have a look and listen. All right, so that 720p webcam and microphone are located at the bottom of the bezel.
If I have this set up for the ergonomics I would like to use this device while sitting on my lap, this is what you get. Nice shot of the pecs, obviously. More ideal, in a sense, would be down here. The tilt on this device isn't really too bad. Honestly, I can live with this, but webcam place at the bottom. We've seen it once on Tongfang chassis. We've seen it 1,000 times.
Next, let's talk about the display. Pros and cons. For starters, the pros. Full HD, 144 Hz, IPS, 98% standard RGB, 317 nits. The part number is BOE0408. And if I recall correctly, response time should be around 7 milliseconds, maybe down to 5 milliseconds. Honestly, it feels great. And there's zero backlight bleed on this panel. Wow, I was very impressed here. But PWM flicker, you get to around 80% brightness or below, and it will show up. I'm not sensitive to this, but if you are, well, now you know. Now on to the integrated software and power limits. And this feature is very half-baked, coming from a Tongfang chassis from Electronics and then comparing it to this. This is where you really start to see that standard start to differentiate, because everything we've talked about so far really doesn't represent anything that Electronics has made featuring these parts, because this chassis has its own identity with its hardware. And for its asking price, I really have no complaints thus far. But here's where we start to get into some of that nitty-gritty stuff where you can start to see the fork in the road. Power limits. Overall, the control center looks very similar to what you've seen in the past. You've got different operating modes, but unfortunately, they actually happen to copy Beast mode word for word. And it's my understanding that Maingears knows this now, and this is something that's going to get changed. English is not their native language. Again, this is like, something that I was told through other people. That should get fixed in an update, because you really just can't copy someone else's work, and that's essentially what was done here. So when I show you Beast mode, just know that in the future, hopefully that will change. But what we really want to look at here is the power limits when selecting each one of these profiles. So when you go over to the basic operating mode, which should be office mode, and again, you can cycle through this just by pressing on the keyboard deck. Office mode here shows 35 watts for both first and second power limit. And if you notice that the Eco mode box is ticked, when you untick that, it does not change. And that's one thing right off the bat that has differentiated Electronics right there, is that it does have a power limit mode change. And Eco mode for Electronics would limit these two both down to 25 watts each. Can be a nice feature for some. When you go over to the game mode, it's 75 watts on both first and second power limit. Now, I don't have a problem with this setting. It wasn't something that I would have particularly chosen, but it actually works out okay. What is strange, however, is their beast mode, their higher performing mode, is the exact same. Power limits do not change. So you essentially have 4 different options here, between office mode having 2 of those options, between regular and eco mode, gaming mode and beast mode, but yet you either have 35 watts for first and second power limit, or 75 watts for the first and second power limit. So it may leave a lot of people kind of scratching their head, wondering as to why they really weren't getting any performance differences, perhaps in benchmarks, or however an individual desires testing their machine when selecting the different profiles. And many of those individuals will come to my channel because I feature chassis like this, and it's a completely different experience as per what I'm showing them versus what they are seeing for themselves. And then when you unplug this from the power supply that I'll show you right here, the power limits will drop down to 40 watts for both first and second power limit, and that will not change regardless of performance mode. One thing that I always liked about this software was the fact that we can max out the fans by toggling it within the software, Fan Boost. This is pretty nice. And then when you cycle through, when you go back to the office mode, it'll go back to the quiet fan, and then you press it again, the turbo mode or beast mode, maximum fans, press it again, gaming mode, which we know has no difference on this particular laptop, but still max fans, hit it again, Fan Boost off. I like that. And in a lot of the Electronics laptops, you can actually change this within the BIOS to make that button a dedicated fan button only. That's not an option on here. We're going to get into the BIOS later, and you'll see some of the differences as I talk about them. The issue that I have with the device at this current point in time, and also why I don't think it's going to change, When you reboot this device, cold boot, no matter what, it is automatically going to go to the middle mode, to game mode, no matter what. And this is going to require a software update and a firmware update to the BIOS in order to get that changed. And what this means is that if you use this laptop how I like to use it, have maximum fan boost on its own, activated when one of these modes is activated. That way I don't have to run this software, you know, and always have it minimized. I just toggle it right here on the keyboard deck. I like that. Anyway, when you turn this machine on and you have this activated, you're gonna have maximum fans, and that might not be ideal. I happened to fall asleep on the couch here one night doing a lot of testing on this laptop over the last week, and it was like 3 a.m. and all of a sudden I woke up and the lid was closed, but the device had woken itself up and it went right to maximum fans, and it was annoying. And it is one of those things where it's going to be annoying, basically rendering that solution a little bit more useless. So it's just one of those things that's sort of half-baked, and the reason why I don't think it's going to get fixed is because we are already like January 1st, 2021, December 31st, right around this point, depending on when I desire uploading this video. The BIOS on here is the newest one from June. And Maingear, if you want to address some of these issues, please do. That would be very nice for your customer. But we're looking at 6 or 7 months down the road now, aren't we? And there's really nothing new here, and there's some things that really do need to be changed. So if you get your hands on this laptop, there's going to be a couple little quirks, and just don't expect them to get fixed. Now, does this ultimately impact the typical experience that one may have an expectation from a gaming laptop? Probably not, but that is honestly a question only you can decide, because everyone's going to be a little bit different. Let's move forward. All right, now here we are in the Battlefield 5 firing range. We have been in here for about 10 seconds at this point. Fans are at maximum, and that fan acoustic, right where it should be, right around 52 decibels at maximum load. And that's average, maybe a little bit better than average in the grand scheme of many of the gaming laptops that I've featured on the channel over the last few years. Not the end of the world, and sort of an expectation that one should have from a gaming laptop, and if you've never had one before, that's going to be incredibly loud. We are in the highest performing mode, toggled according to the profile, and we're going to talk about whether or not this has Eluktroboost and how you can tell. So I have this device connected to a watt meter, and as you can see right here, folks, we're getting around 185 watts. Our CPU is pulling around 42 watts, GPU is pulling around 90 watts, and then everything else is what it is. You can see the CPU temperatures right around 90 degrees Celsius. This will easily hit 95 degrees Celsius, and you're going to see the GPU continue to climb rapidly until it hits 86 degrees Celsius, at which point it will begin to power throttle itself. More on that when we get into gaming here in a hot second. But how you can tell if you have Eluktroboost is right here. 185 watts being pulled from the 180 watt power supply unit. Yeah, what do you think of that? If we were to hit this button again, if we had Eluktroboost, you would see this number drop anywhere between 20 to 40 watts depending on the CPU and GPU configuration. Again, Eluktroboost cannot be monitored in third-party software because it is a hardware modification done to the system, not a BIOS update. We've gone over this for the last 2 or 3 years now. The only way you can tell is with one of these here. So we're going to hit the button again. Nothing. Still 185 watts. Don't believe me? If we hit this button again, it's going to go to office mode, and therefore the CPU is going to drop to around 35 watts, and you're going to see this go to around 175 watts, 178 watts. Are you ready? Fans are going to get quieter too. There it is. Wattage drops down to right around that 175 to 178 that I had stated. There is no Eluktroboost on this device, ultimately rendering the whole game mode, beast mode differential completely useless. I don't like that. Does it matter to you? Only you can decide. Moving forward, let's showcase some Call of Duty Black Ops and show you just how quickly this thing will get to thermal throttling within 5 minutes of one game. All right, a few minutes has gone by since we got out of the firing range for Battlefield to showcase whatever kind of boost performance we could get from the software. And now we are into Black Ops searching for our first game. You can see that the thermal performance on this is already starting to creep up, and we're only at 60 FPS with 51% utilization because we are just essentially in the game's dashboard. We're not even in the game yet. We're going to play this until the GPU gets to 86 degrees Celsius. I'm going to be talking about that along the way. This should take about 3 to 5 minutes. I may fast forward for time, but I will not jump cut. That way you guys can literally see essentially in real time as to how quickly this device does heat up. And we're going to talk about it as soon as we get inside this game. All right, now we're inside. Don't have any gameplay expectations. Okay, this is not pre-recorded. I couldn't care less. We're talking about thermals. We've got the speaker volume all the way up, the maximum fans, 52 decibels, speaker volume, microphones right here. You're going to be able to hear everything that's going on along with my voice, and this is about as real as it can get. And keep something in mind. Most laptops, I have to spend several hours in order to feel satisfied with the amount of heat soak I get from these devices, and then I showcase thermal performance. This, I can pretty much show you just how bad it is within about 5 minutes. But if you like this kind of content, let me know in the comment section below. I'll do a teardown video, throw on some new thermal paste, and see if we can fix this little beauty. Are you ready? Oh, game time. Look at that, we're already at 83 degrees Celsius. 90 plus on the CPU. What a bummer. Frame rate's pretty good. I do not have the system maxed out, but yeah, I mean, I like to try to get 100 FPS on average if I can when I'm playing on a panel this kind of refresh rate on an FPS title. Regardless, GPU saturation's good. We're about 95% or better, so I'm pretty happy with that. Look at that, 85 degrees Celsius. I mean, how long has it been, guys? Seriously, like a couple of minutes? That's terrible.
Throwing frag grenade.
Look at that, 86 degrees Celsius. That took no time at all. Ooh. Oh my gosh. Isn't that awful? Look at that, 95, 94, 96 degrees Celsius on the CPU. So quickly, and keyboard temperatures, we're looking at, oh boy, around 40 degrees Celsius on the WASD key area. This will get much hotter. You play this for an hour, keyboard temp is over 50 degrees Celsius. It's not comfortable at all. So let's go ahead and back out of here, and then we'll get into the BIOS. Now that we're inside the BIOS, there's only 2 key features that this BIOS brings to the table, and then we'll talk about the other ones that you may be used to seeing featured on an electronics laptop. We have the core voltage offset, so being able to undervolt in the BIOS, always a fan of that. And the maximum is 50. If I do try to set this to 51 or higher, it says invalid input range. 50 is as high as it can go. Switchable graphics, we are on the dedicated graphics only. You could go MS Hybrid or the integrated only, and I did talk about that previously. That does work pretty well. Now, as far as the rest of the features that you may find missing compared to other similar laptops, well, the dedicated hardware button on the keyboard deck can oftentimes be used as a dedicated maximum fan button instead. That's also an option that would be inside of many of electronics laptops. The function key feature, you can also switch that in many electronics laptops, where instead of pressing the FN and function key, each one of those keys acts as that particular function. Memory tweaking, right? Various things like that. There's a lot more tunability in those devices, and if you're not into it, great. I don't care. I'm just giving you a heads up. There are some differences on this device compared to what it is being compared to, and I'm just trying to let you know. All right, the Maingear Vector 2 is its own laptop and should not be compared to an electronics device, and that's more or less what I wanted to showcase here while simultaneously essentially reviewing this machine in a way that I thought would be fun. Just know that the build quality is not quite up to snuff when you're comparing it to other devices out there, but it does have a muck switch. The panel is very nice, but it does offer PWM flicker. We do like that it has a muck switch within that BIOS, and I'm not going to get tired of saying that, but the options within that BIOS are very slim. And that could actually be a good thing too for many people out there, if I'm being perfectly honest. Overall, I think at $1,000 US, this is a pretty good device, even for early 2021. Even with some of the stuff that's probably going to be coming out in the next 6 months, it's going to fetch a premium price. and it probably won't even have a lot of the features that this does. And I just mean in the grand scheme of laptops, not Maingear, not electronics that I was comparing this to. I think it's a good value, and I think it's going to stand to be a good value provided you're willing to spend the additional $70 to turn this single-channel memory Vector 2 into a dual-channel gaming beast. When it comes to thermal performance, I searched the internet. I'm not the only one that's having a hot Vector 2. This is sort of a thing among many users of this chassis, and we won't know if that's going to get better until we do a teardown and a repaste of this particular device. Time will tell on that, so stay tuned. Overall, you let me know what you think of everything that you saw here, and more importantly, if you're on the forums and you're recommending this device, now you are better equipped to handle those recommendations because now you know more about this laptop and its expectations when compared to the competition. Alright folks, that's going to do it. Hopefully you enjoyed this quirky and in-depth review. Timestamps, of course, in the description below, but if you made it this far, it should not matter. I'm Bob of All Trades. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.